Hey third grade! Today we're going to talk about fractions. We're going to talk about reducing fractions and simplifying fractions to their lowest terms. So when we're talking about fractions, it's important to remember some of the key terms that help us understand what we need to do. The very first one that we need to remember is what the top and bottom number are called in a fraction. The top number is called a numerator. That's the very first number. And the bottom number right here is called a denominator. So in your math book, they will refer to the numerator or the denominator a lot. So it's important to remember which one is which. Another key term that we need to remember is factor. A factor is any number that we multiply or divide another number by. So I might multiply two numbers, and one of those numbers would be called a factor. In our math book and in fractions, it's important to remember the word factor because a lot of times our math book will tell us to multiply or divide by a factor of. That just means I'm going to multiply or divide that number by the factor or the number that the math book will give you. So if I had the fraction of 8/10 and it tells me to reduce or make an equivalent fraction by a factor of 2 or a factor of 4 or a factor of 5 or whatever, that means I'm going to multiply or divide the 8/10 by that number. So if it says I'm going to reduce by a factor of 2, I know that means I need to divide both sides by 2, right? Or multiply both sides by 2. Okay, so those are some important things to remember when we're doing fractions. Anytime in our math book, on a math test, or in practicing at home, when we see the word reduce means to make something smaller. So I will have a larger number that I want to make smaller. If I see the word reduce, like reduce this fraction, it means I need to make that fraction smaller. Those numbers smaller. How do I do that? Do I multiply or do I divide? Well, if I'm reducing, that means I'm making it into a smaller number because I'm taking that number and I'm dividing it into smaller groups. So I know when I see the word reduce, that automatically means I'm going to divide. So reduce is an important term to remember because it tells me right away what kind of problem I'm doing. Division. So today we're going to do some practicing reducing fractions. Remember that when I reduce a number by a factor of something, that means I'm going to be dividing by that number. So today I'm going to reduce my fraction by a factor of 2. So whatever the fraction is right here, and let me make my division symbol clear. I'm going to reduce my fraction by 2. What does that mean? That means I'm going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. So let's go back to our original fraction that I wrote. 8/10. I'm going to reduce 8/10 by a factor of 2. I'm going to reduce it, meaning I'm going to make it smaller by dividing the numerator is the top number, and the denominator by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I've taken my 8/10, my larger fraction, and reduced it to 4/5. Now, I made the number smaller, right? 4/5 is a smaller number than 8/10. But if I take a piece of pie and I cut it into 1, 2, 3, 10 pieces. And I eat 8 of them. So I'm going to color in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of the pie. I have eaten 8 pieces of the pie. Well, what if I cut this piece into 5 pieces? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not quite even, but there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I eat 4 of them. So I color 1, 2, 3, 4. I have eaten the same amount of the pie, but I have cut the pie into less pieces. So I still ate the same amount. My belly is still just as full. I just ate less pieces. But the pieces themselves were larger. So see, these little tiny pieces were small. And this is only 1 piece that's left, but it's the same size as my 2 pieces over here. So I still ate the same amount, but I ate less number of pieces. So that's what it means to reduce a fraction. Still the same amount. 8/10 and 4/5 are different numbers, but they are the same amount. So now let's talk about reducing our fractions to its lowest terms. This time the math book gave us what factor we're dividing it by. But what if our math book says reduce the fraction to its lowest terms? That means I'm reducing it to where I can't divide it anymore. Well, to do that, I have another important term that we need to remember, which is my greatest common factor. GCF. Greatest common factor. That means I'm going to take both 8 and the 10, and I'm going to find out all of the numbers that each number can be divided by, and I'm going to find the number that is the same in both numbers that is the largest. So 8, I can divide 8 by 1. I can divide 8 by 2. I can make it into 2. Can I divide by 3? Nope, 8 won't divide by 3. Can I divide 8 by 4? Yep, I can divide 8 by 4. Can I divide 8 by 5? No. By 6? No. By 7? No. By 8? Yes, I can divide 8 by 8. Well, 8 is the highest number that it is, so I'm not going to write down any more numbers for 8. So 10, I know I can divide by 1. I can also divide by 2. Can I divide by 3? No. Can I divide by 4? No. Can I divide by 5? Yes, I can divide by 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I can divide by 10. So now I've written down all of the numbers that are the same, or I've written down all of the numbers that I can divide each number by. And now I'm going to go and look and see if any of these numbers are the same. Well, they can both be divided by 1, and they both can be divided by 2, but those are really the only numbers that are the same. I'm going to circle the number that is the largest out of all the numbers that are the same, that are common for both of the numbers. So 2 is the highest number out of 8 and 10 that I can divide both numbers by. 8 and 10 are the highest numbers, or 4 and 5 are the highest numbers that I can divide both sides by. They're higher than 2, but I can't divide both 8 and 10 by 4 or 5. Okay? So I can divide both 8 and 10 by a factor of 2. So let's do that really quick. We did it a little bit ago, but just for a refresher. So now I know that 2 is what I'm going to divide by. I'm going to divide each side by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 4/5 is the lowest term. That's the lowest my fraction can go by dividing it evenly. So that's the lowest it can go. It won't get less than 4/5. There are no other numbers in both 4 and 5 that I can divide evenly for both. I could divide 1, but it would still be the same, right? Because 4 divided by 1 would be 4, 5 divided by 1 would still be 5, so it wouldn't change the fraction. This is the lowest term that I can get for that fraction. Let's do another one. What about 5/15? 5/15. In my math book, it says reduce to lowest terms. Since it says reduce to lowest terms, it doesn't give me a factor to divide my 5 and my 15 by. So I have to go through and write down all of the common numbers, or in my head, it helps to write it down though. So I know that I can divide 5 by 1. 1 goes into every number. Can I divide 5 evenly by 2? No, I can't divide 5 by 2. Can I divide 5 by 3 or 4? Nope. 2, 3, 4. None of those numbers will divide evenly out of a 5, but a 5 will. So my two numbers that I can divide evenly out of 5 are 1 and 5. What about 15? I can divide by 1, 2, no, 3, yes, I can divide 15 evenly by 3, not 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm not going to go any higher than 15 because 15 is my number. So now I know that 5 has a 1 and a 5 that it can be divided by, and 15, 1, 3, 5, and 15. The highest number of these two factors is 15, but there's not a 15 over here in 5, so I'm looking for my greatest common factor. What is the greatest factor out of both of these numbers that is the same? And that is a 5. Both 5 and 15 can be divided evenly by 5. So that's what I'm going to do. I found my greatest common factor, which is 5. So now I'm going to divide 5/15 by 5, because that was my greatest common factor. So remember, when we're reducing, we need to divide both sides, not just one. 5 divided by 5 is what? 1. I can divide 5 into 5 groups of 1, or into one group of 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 15 into 5 groups of 3. So 1/3 is the lowest term. 5/15 can be reduced to 1/3. It doesn't get any lower than that. I can't take any more numbers out of 1 or 3 that are the same. I can't divide them by any more factors. This is the lowest I can divide. So, just like in the other problem, 5/15 is the same amount as 1/3, it's just less pieces. It's less numbers. We're going to do one more simplifying or reducing to the lowest terms, and then we're going to move on to a new concept. All right. 9/12. In my math book, it says reduce to lowest. It doesn't give me a factor to divide by, so I have to find what I'm dividing each side by. Just like we did in the other two problems, I'm going to write down the numbers that are the same for each. So 9 can be divided by 1. It cannot be divided by 2, because 2 won't go evenly into 9. I can divide evenly by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The numbers I can divide 9 evenly by are 1, 3, and 9. 12, I can divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's see, which one of these numbers is the largest number that is the same for both? Well, 9 is the largest number on this line, but there's no line on my bottom line, so that's not it. I have a 3 next. Is there a 3 here in my bottom line? Yes, there is. So I know that 3 is the largest or the greatest common factor. 3 is the largest number that is the same for both 9 and 12. So my greatest common factor is 3, so let's divide. Both sides are going to be divided by our greatest common factor, which is 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Can I divide 3/4 into any more numbers? No, because 3 won't go into 4 evenly, 2 won't go into 3 evenly, so 3/4 is the lowest terms that I can divide 9/12 by. There you have it. That is a refresher on how to reduce fractions and reduce fractions to their lowest terms. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.